Part 6. Fringe Artists in the Entertainment Industry. Author, Chizuda Xiaomao. Chapter 51. Chapter 51. The name Huayu is wrong. There is a quiet beauty in the courtyard in autumn, and the bright yellow leaves falling are like the sun setting in the sky. Chen Miren, wearing a white sportswear, stood on the fallen leaves on the ground, as if she was stepping on golden light. Chen Lian looked at the smiling Chen Miren and felt that she had really changed a lot and was becoming more and more energetic. Did you finally realize that I'm good looking? Chen Miren stretched her waist and showed off her beautiful figure. Chen Lian nodded and said, "It always looks good." Listening to Chen Lian's words, Chen Miren felt that the leaves had become cute today. Chen Lian looked at the ginkgo leaves that fell on Chen Miren's shoulders, raised his hand to brush them off and said, "My bag is still in your car." Yet Chen Miren nodded and then looked at Chen Lian and asked, "You want to leave?" Chen Lian explained helplessly, "Yes, I only took 3 days off. The leaves are so annoying." Chen Miren kicked the ginkgo leaves that fell at her feet, feeling a little irritated. "Can't you leave tomorrow?" Chen Lian didn't feel any reluctance to part with his son and daughter. He shook his head and said rationally, "No, I will have a roll tomorrow. Then I'll take you back." "You are driving too slowly, I can just take the car back." On the train bound for Suzhou, Chen Lian looked helplessly at Chen Miren who was coming with him opposite. "Why are you following me?" "I'm happy to, but I can't go to Shanghai." Chen Miren peeled an orange and put it in her mouth to taste it, then peeled off a piece and handed it to Chen Lian's mouth. Chen Lian couldn't stand Miren Cheng's enthusiasm. He reached out to take the orange, then looked at Miren seriously and said, "Don't be so serious. I'm not the kind of person you want to find." "What kind of person?" Chen Miren ate a piece of orange nonchalantly, and then said to herself, "Someone with connections, status, and connections. I used to want to find someone like this, but now I don't. Besides, you are so young and may have a better future, and I also want to be a lovable person," Chen Miren said pointedly, holding on. He looked at Chen Lian with his chin. "Why me?" Chen Lian had a headache, and then continued, "I lack emotion and have a cold nature. I can't fall in love or get married." Chen Miren said without changing her expression, "It doesn't matter. It's not sleeping with anyone. It's better to find someone young and handsome that you like." Such a direct and bold statement left Chen Lian completely speechless. He felt that if he continued to push, it would be a bit unjustifiable, but he didn't know whether what Chen Miren said was true or false. "Even if I feel from the bottom of my heart that Mei Cheng is very good looking and has a lovable personality, I do have some interest in her, but I don't just fall in love with her because I like her, I always have to consider the consequences." "Are you afraid that I will get involved with you?" Chen Miren asked, looking at Chen Lian who was frowning. Chen Lian said nothing, looking at Chen Miren's expression which was self-evident. Chen Miren did not hide it, and said directly, "I definitely want to pester you. What woman doesn't want to find someone she likes to get married, but I also want to go crazy once, and just follow my heart without thinking about the results and whether it's worth it." After speaking, Chen Miren sat up slightly, kissed Chen Lian quickly on the face, and then said with a bright smile, "Just like this." Chen Lian turned his head and glanced at the empty corridor of the sleeper car, then turned to Chen Miren and said, "Isn't it too fast? We have only known each other for a few days. I feel that you are a little impulsive. Although I am not a good person, I have some own principles." "Then do you know that principled villains are the most charming? Every time you are cruel to me, I feel that you are so handsome and feel particularly safe." Chen Miren squinted her eyes and smiled beautifully, with no trace of regret or impulsiveness in her eyes. "Nothing. You said it yourself, I don't fall in love, at most they are good friends." Chen Lian is also a man, and it would be a lie to say that he is not attracted. These are 4 beauties. The most beautiful woman in ancient costume. I said so myself, Chen Myren threw the orange in her hand on the table, then looked into the corridor and sat down next to Chen Lian. Chen Lian looked into Chen Myren's eyes and felt something bad, so he stepped back a little and said, "There are other people in the carriage, don't mess around." "No one, I've seen it. And kissing is not illegal, so let me kiss you." Chen Myren. You. You. The long train suddenly sped up and made a rumbling sound, quickly passing through the dark tunnel until it was completely swallowed by the tunnel. More than 10 hours later, on the platform of Suzhou Station, Chen Lian stood in front of the train door and looked at Chen Myren and said, "I'm leaving then. You go to Shanghai and call the cruise hotel." "Yeah, let's go. I'll come see you after the show in a few days," Chen Myren said, holding onto the armrest of the carriage. Chen Lian nodded and got out of the car, while Chen Myren continued to take the bus to Shanghai for acupuncture business performance. After leaving the station, Chen Lian looked at Suzhou City in the early morning, took a deep breath, ran to buy the steamed buns at the entrance of the station, and then hailed a taxi that had just left to go to Tongli Watertown. Returning to Tongli Water Village again, Chen Lian's mood was a little complicated when he returned to the crew. He was about to meet Mr. Zhou and Gong Li. I wonder if Mr. Zhou has caused trouble for Gong Li in the past 2 days. This crew really chose the wrong name. It shouldn't be called Huayu, it should be called Fenjiu. "Here, the buns from that place last time." Chen Lian walked up to Leslie Chung, who was sitting on the set reading the script, and handed the buns to him. Zhang Guorong looked at the buns in front of him, then turned to look at Chen Lian and said, "You're back. I've already finished breakfast. Forget it if you don't want to eat it. Didn't you say it was delicious last time? Otherwise I wouldn't have brought it to you." Chen Lian took back his hand and took out a bun from the bag and ate it himself. Zhang Guorong didn't care and whispered to Chen Lian, "You are finished. Gong Li and Mr. Zhou have been living together every day for the past 2 days. They must be working together to find a way to deal with you, a scumbag." Chen Lian was stunned with the bun in his mouth. What was going on? What happened during the 3 days he was away? Chen Lian immediately turned around and glanced around the set. He didn't see Gong Li and Mr. Zhou. He took the buns out of his mouth and looked at Zhang Guorong and asked, "Where are the 2 of them?" "No, how did you know they were going to persecute me?" Zhang Guorong smiled proudly and said, "In the dressing room, I am Zhang Guorong. I can't understand anything. Do you think no one knows?" Chen Lian bumped into Zhang Guorong speechlessly and said, "Stop talking nonsense, tell me what's going on." "I don't know, I guess, for a scum like you, if you provoke 2 people at the same time, it's okay if I don't beat you to death," Zhang Guorong snorted. Chen Lian was speechless after hearing this. He spent a long time guessing and thought Zhang Guorong had heard something. Just when Chen Lian breathed a sigh of relief, Gong Li and Mr. Zhou came out of the dressing room talking and laughing, and saw Chen Lian who had just returned. The 2 of them looked at Chen Lian and then at each other. Their expressions, which were originally chatting and laughing, suddenly became a little colder. Chen Lian also saw Gong Li and Mr. Zhou. He turned around silently and squatted behind Zhang Guorong, lowering his head and concentrating on eating the buns. Before he finished a bun, 4 delicate and cute feet appeared in front of Chen Lian. When he looked up, he saw Gong Li and Mr. Zhou looking at him condescendingly. Chen Lian swallowed a sip of saliva, then raised half of the bun in his hand and said, Do you want to eat buns?" The 4th update is completed. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 52. Chapter 52. Brother, except Chinyu, please follow up. Do you want to eat steamed buns? Chen Lian raised his head and looked at Gong Li and Mr. Zhou. He felt that the wind was so noisy today, and there was a cold air rushing straight from the solace of his feet to his forehead. Zhang Guorong sat next to him with his legs crossed and lit a cigarette as if watching a good show. This kind of scene is rare in Xiangjiang. Naturally, no one would eat half of the buns in Chen Lian's hand. Gong Li looked at him with a somewhat uneasy look, and immediately straightened her face and said coldly, "Come with me." Mr. Zhou also joined in the fun and snorted, and even kicked Chen Lian. "We're about to start filming soon. Let's talk about it later if anything happens." Chen Lian was stunned for a moment, then patted the footprints on his calf and said calmly. Seeing that it didn't work, Gong Li softened her voice and said, "Master Zhou and I have something to talk to you. Will you come?" "No, no, no, I want to film." Chen Lian wouldn't ask for trouble, squatting there with his head down eating steamed buns. A breeze blew through the meat buns and the aroma of the meat buns was blown away. There was no taste at all in the mouth. Chen Lian chewed 2 mouthfuls and swallowed, and threw the remaining buns on Zhang Guorong, who was watching the show. Zhang Guorong looked at the paper bag in his arms, reached out and picked up the bun inside and took a bite, wanting to see what Chen Lian would do. Standing up again, Chen Lian used his height to successfully establish a psychological advantage. He lowered his head and said to Gong Li, "We'll talk about it after we finish work. I'm going to put on makeup and change clothes first." After saying that, he turned around and ran to the dressing room to change clothes and put on makeup. Gong Li and Mr. Zhou looked at each other, and then said a little discouraged, "I just said this is useless. How can a person like him feel guilty? Maybe he is wishing for it?" Mr. Zhou also had doubts in his little head. He looked at Gong Li and said doubtfully, "What are you hoping for?" Gong Li smiled and said, "I wish I could cut it off cleanly." Mr. Zhou, "I guess not, is he willing? There are a lot of tricks I've said I haven't tried yet." In the dressing room, Chen Lian had just changed his clothes and turned around when he saw Zhang Guorong leaning against the door and looking at him. "Tisk, with so much money, no wonder he can provoke several women at the same time," Zhang Guorong teased, leaning against the door. Chen Lian said angrily, "It's like you've seen it before. I didn't take off my clothes." It always felt weird to talk about this kind of topic with a man in the dressing room. Chen Lian folded his clothes, then looked at Zhang Guorong and asked, "Are they two still outside?" "Now you know you're afraid," Zhang Guorong asked jokingly. Chen Lian was stunned for a moment, then muttered, "What am I afraid of? It's not illegal. Stop talking, I'll see what you do tonight. I'm asking you to take me in tonight. Roll." "Okay." After a small episode in the morning, Chen Lian's condition was not affected at all, and he still performed well during the filming. Director Cheng also praised Chen Lian several times today. The reason is simple. He felt that Chen Lian had become obedient and he could do whatever was asked of him. Now that Chen Lian has read it, the movie Huayu is like the plasticine in Director Cheng's hands. He can squeeze it however he wants. Others only need to be obedient and let him round and flatten it. Don't have your own ideas and don't think about performing your own stuff. In his heart, Chen Lian completely lost empathy for the character Zhong Qiu. It was just a pure performance, and it was difficult to empathize with him anymore. The role of Mid-Autumn Festival will not make Chen Lian burst out with 200% enthusiasm and passion like Chile. He now wants to finish filming as soon as possible and then find a role that he likes and a challenging role to play. Movie actors are so boring. Chen Lian misses the time of acting in dramas. That is the real performance and the real stage for actors. It is useless to miss him. Now he wants to act in a drama, and there is no drama troupe that will accept him. He will wait until he reports back to school. Chen Lian still has a problem to solve at the moment. Now that he is about to call it a day, Gong Li and Mr. Zhou gather together and murmur, as if they are plotting something. Chen Lian didn't want to make things so troublesome. When 3 people met together, there would definitely be a big explosion of sparks. It would be better to defeat them one by one. After finishing the work, Chen Lian immediately found Zhang Guorong and pulled him to ask for help. "Brother, take me in Chenyu. The first time Chen Lian called Zhang Guorong brother, he immediately became happy and said with great style, Zhu Yihao will not accept scum like you. Chen Lian. The boss has the nerve to talk about the second child. Most people only know about Zhang Guorong and Mr. Tang, but many people don't know that Zhang Guorong has had 6 girlfriends, but the results of these 6 relationships were not good. Chen Lian and Leslie Chung really look like scum when compared. But regardless of whether Zhang Guorong is willing to take him in or not, Chen Lian plans to rely on him tonight. Drink his wine. Sleep in his bed. Gong Li and Mr. Zhou were filled with hatred when they saw Chen Lian, who had been chatting with Leslie Chung. This bitch was not going to talk to them anymore, was he? When getting on the minibus, Chen Lian also took Zhang Guorong to sit together, determined not to sit with anyone from Gong Li or Mr. Zhou. Under the cover of night, in the slowly moving minibus, Leslie Chung looked at Chen Lian with disgust and said, I won't help you, so don't pester me. Chen Lian immediately whispered, brother, I, Shiniu, am loyal to you. You can't just die without saving me. If you eat my buns, you can't turn your back on me. Just one night will do. No, I'll keep you for 2 hours at most. That's okay, but you have to open a bottle of wine. Are your buns made of gold? It's light on etiquette but heavy on affection. After the minibus returned to the hotel, Chen Lian immediately jumped out of the car, pulled Zhang Guorong and wanted to run away. It's a pity that Zhang Guorong was stopped by Gong Li. Brother, I'm going to find you to review the script tonight. Gong Li walked over quickly with a smile on her face, but her eyes were fixed on Chen Lian. Chen Lian turned away and looked at the round moon in the sky, feeling that the moonlight tonight was not beautiful at all. Mr. Zhou took the opportunity to come over, took Chen Lian's arm and left without giving him time to react. Chen Lian immediately turned back to Zhang Guorong and cast a look for help. Zhang Guorong glanced at the corner of his mouth, but still loyally pulled Gong Li, who wanted to follow, and said, okay, I'm free now. Gong Li, who was pulled away, looked at the backs of Chen Lian and Mr. Zhou going up the stairs. She smiled helplessly and said to Zhang Guorong, brother, you did it on purpose. Zhang Guorong pretended to be stupid and looked at Gong Li and said, it's not you who wants to review the script. Gong Li. I don't need to open my mouth. It would be nice to just pull her away, but I still have some concerns. Chen Lian upstairs looked back and was relieved when he didn't see Gong Li following him. Mr. Zhou's body was thin, but he burst out with a lot of strength. He pulled Chen Lian all the way into the room. After entering, Mr. Zhou immediately pushed Chen Lian to the wall, pressed his chest and asked, how did you get back that day? Chen Lian frowned. Why did young Master Zhou suddenly ask this? When he left in Chen Miran's car that day, young Master Zhou and the others were all on the set, so they probably didn't see him. Seeing Chen Lian's slightly narrowed eyes, Mr. Zhou immediately said, don't even think about lying. Someone saw you taking Myron Cheng's car. The air in the dull room was a little stagnant. Chen Lian looked at Mr. Zhou calmly and asked, what do you want to ask next? Mr. Zhou looked at Chen Lian's calm eyes and suddenly panicked in his heart, like a balloon that had been popped by a needle and lost all its strength. I knew, yes, that's right, I shouldn't ask, I'm leaving. Mr. Zhou wiped the corners of his red eyes, lowered his head and turned to leave. Chen Lian sighed inwardly and did not try to persuade Mr. Zhou to stay. He could not give any promise to him. As soon as the door opened, Mr. Zhou saw Gong Li following Zhang Guorong and preparing to go to his room. After Mr. Zhou opened the door, Gong Li glanced over and found Mr. Zhou's eyes were red, and she immediately understood something. He immediately turned around and pulled Mr. Zhou into Chen Lian's room again. Zhang Guorong was left in the corridor in a daze. Shiniu, brother has tried his best, please wish yourself well. A little later, there is another chapter. It is relatively slow for those who are trying to code words at work. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu Xiaomao. Chapter 53. Chapter 53. No one can leave tonight. Seeking for further reading. The tungsten lamp on the ceiling emits yellow light, the moon outside the window is covered by dark clouds, and the air pressure in the room becomes much lower, making people feel breathless. The atmosphere between the three people in the room was like the sky outside. The air seemed to be frozen, dull and depressing, like before a storm. Mr. Joe's eyes were red, he lowered his head and looked at his toes, but the fingers holding his arms were slightly white. Chen Lian leaned against the wall and took out a cigarette from his pocket. The crisp sound of the lighter broke the quiet atmosphere. He could understand Mr. Joe's mood, but what did this have to do with Gong Li? The relationship between the two of them was just an impulsive accident, and there was no need to get involved. Gong Li glanced at Chen Lian. She didn't know how to say what she originally wanted to say. After all, she and Mr. Joe were different. She had just rushed in out of sheer enthusiasm, but now she felt a little embarrassed. She had no position to stand on Mr. Joe's side and accuse Chen Lian. What's more, she doesn't know what happened between Chen Lian and Mr. Joe now, and she feels very uncomfortable because she has no way to vent the anger she is holding in her heart. Originally, she did some ideological work for Mr. Joe, telling her that you can't catch a man like Chen Lian, and it's good to be friends. Let sister come, sister is rich. Well, Gong Li said the following words in her heart. Naturally, Mr. Joe didn't believe it. He always thought that he could capture Chen Lian's heart. Gong Li had no choice but to make a bet with Mr. Joe that Chen Lian would definitely have something happen to Myron Cheng. This was also the reason why they were planning to talk to Chen Lian today, but it seemed that there was no need to ask now. Mr. Joe's reaction said everything. Chen Lian put down the cigarette and looked straight at the bright tungsten lamp. After a while, he turned his eyes to Gong Li. Sister, I'll have a chat with young Master Joe. If you want, go ahead and do some work. Gong Li looked into Chen Lian's eyes, was silent for a while and said, okay. After Gong Li went out, Chen Lian sat by the bed and looked at Mr. Joe with red eyes. He didn't know how to open his mouth for a long time. After a long time, Mr. Joe raised his head and looked at Chen Lian, and asked softly, have you never liked me? Of course not. I said I like you, but this is different from love. Chen Lian threw away the cigarette butt in his hand and stamped it out with his foot. He was also a little irritable in his heart. It is the most difficult to accept the kindness of a beautiful woman. Mr. Joe understood the meaning of Chen Lian's words, and he couldn't tell whether he was disappointed or grateful. At least Chen Lian would not lie to himself, nor did he lie to himself. Are you and Myron Cheng? Mr. Joe paused for a moment, then looked at Chen Lian with some annoyance and couldn't help but cursed, why are you so lewd? Chen Lian coughed, his expression a little embarrassed, and hesitantly said, how can I be considered lecherous if I am passive? At most, I have weak willpower. Shameless, Master Joe spat with a red face. He couldn't help but punch Chen Lian and said, I've endured you and Sister Gong Li, but you still go to seduce Cheng Myron. Mr. Joe's words really have the demeanor of a queen. He is indeed a Mr. Joe with a rich love history. Unfortunately, Chen Lian is not an emperor, at most he is a gentleman named Ximen. Mr. Ximen said a little rogue, I refused, and Gong Li and I were just an accident. Humph, you have excuses for everything. Mr. Joe finally understood that Chen Lian was shameless. He did the same thing when he first hooked up with him. He first made you excited, and then passively waited for you to come to your door. The more Mr. Joe thought about it, the angrier he became. He grabbed Chen Lian's hand and bit it. You are a dog. Chen Lian bared his teeth and wanted to push Mr. Joe away but was reluctant to use any force. Mr. Joe bit Chen Lian's arm and muttered, I'll lock you and rub it. I won't seduce others anymore. Chen Lian originally wanted to deal with it, but looking at Mr. Zhou's stubborn face, his heart softened and he said, I was wrong, okay. But, it's so salty, it's all sweat. Mr. Zhou let go of his mouth and sighed twice. A trace of pride flashed in his eyes, but he quickly suppressed it. Bitch man, Mr. Zhou cursed in a low voice. Chen Lian looked at the tooth mark on his wrist, and then at the little pride that just flashed in Mr. Zhou's eyes. He felt an inexplicable pain in his heart. He sighed helplessly and said, you are really becoming more and more courageous. Say it's a chance encounter between us all, so you have to do it for real. Whoever wants to be with you will definitely end up alone. Mr. Zhou snorted, then pinched Chen Lian's chin provocatively and said, I'm just angry that you still seduced others when you were with me. You just said it was an accident once, but you did it again. If you do this again, I will go seducing other men. Will make you mad. When Chen Lian heard this, he clasped his toes unconsciously. He seemed to have gone a bit too far, but he was really passive. He even rejected Cheng Myron several times. Regardless of the facts, Chen Lian felt that he just had a weak willpower. Those are four beauties. No amount of heroes could refuse, let alone Mr. Chen. Seeing that Chen Lian was reluctant to resist his provocation, Mr. Zhou became a little bolder, pinched his lips, opened his mouth and bit down. The pain on his lips instantly woke Chen Lian up, and he directly reached out to wrap his arms around Mr. Zhou's slender waist, turning her over and pressing her down. The tungsten light on the ceiling flashed, as if to protest the two people on the bed who were not behaving well. Boom, boom, boom. There was a knock on the door suddenly, and Chen Lian paused for a moment, feeling that this scene seemed familiar. Chen Lian let go of Mr. Zhou, looked at her confused eyes and whispered, it's probably Gong Li, I'll send her away. Mr. Zhou let go of his hand around Chen Lian's neck and urged him, hurry up. Yet Chen Lian grunted and got up from the bed, walked to the door and opened it. As expected, it was Gong Li outside the door. Gong Li looked at Chen Lian's somewhat messy clothes and his lipstick-stained mouth, and couldn't help but cursed in her heart, you're such a young Master Zhou, you told me before that you wanted to dry Chen Lian out, but now you can't help it anymore. Then Gong Li thought of the last time her good deeds were messed up by young Master Zhou, and became even more angry, so she pushed Chen Lian away and walked inside. Mr. Zhou, are you okay? Chen Lian didn't bully you, did he? Let me see you, Gong Li said as she walked inside. Chen Lian was stunned. Mr. Zhou, who was taking off his clothes in the room, was also confused. Why did he come in? When Gong Li walked in, she saw Mr. Zhou holding half of his clothes with both hands and looking at her blankly. She immediately sneered in her heart and looked at Mr. Zhou in a panic and said, Mr. Zhou, did he just bully you? Are you okay? Come on, follow me, I will protect you. As Gong Li said this, she pulled off half of Mr. Zhou's clothes. Mr. Zhou looked at his tightly fitting clothes that were pulled by Gong Li and said blankly, Sister, he didn't bully me. Chen Lian stood behind and looked at Gong Li, who was pretending to be stupid, and felt a little angry. My dear sister, she did this on purpose. Boom. The door was suddenly blown shut by the wind. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 54. Chapter 54. Fenjiao is just Fenjiao, please follow up. The closed window was opened, and the breeze after the rain flew in from the window, bringing with it a stream of moisture, and immediately took away the sultry air in the house. Gong Li sat on the edge of the bed and glanced at the dark sky outside the window, then turned her attention to the oil painting by the window that had not yet dried. Under the dim light, the oil paint on the canvas glowed dimly. Gong Li walked to the painting and looked at Mr. Zhou in the painting. She felt like an elf under the moon, pure and sacred. Mr. Zhou in peacetime is completely two people. Did you draw this, Gong Li turned to look at Chen Lian. Gong Li was a little surprised by Chen Lian's paintings. She always thought that Chen Lian was just an actor, but she didn't expect that Chen Lian could also be a painter, and he could paint so well. As a literary and art worker, Gong Li's artistic quality and aesthetics are very good. She can see that this painting is good, and it is better than many paintings she has seen. Chen Lian's image in Gong Li's eyes seems to be taller now. Chen Lian hummed, then picked up the cigarette case on the bedside and took out a white stick and lit it. The green smoke rising slowly from the cigarette end was gently carried away by the breeze in the room and floated out the window. Gong Li looked at the painting in front of her and felt a little envious. She didn't know whether she was envious of Mr. Zhou's treatment or the beauty in the painting. "You can also draw one for me." Gong Li turned her head and looked into Chen Lian's eyes and said. Chen Lian hit his head with his fingers holding the cigarette and said, "It's empty, no inspiration." Gong Li chuckled and stood up and walked to Chen Lian, put her hand on his shoulder and smelled the smell of smoke in the air. "It doesn't look like it to me. You must have some inspiration." Gong Li smiled and said to Chen Lian, "If you don't have any inspiration, just stimulate it." Chen Lian. Gong Li raised the corners of her mouth and looked at Chen Lian, her eyes like hooks. Just when their eyes were about to collide, Master Zhou's voice suddenly came from the bathroom. "The faucet seems to be broken and there is no water." Chen Lian and Gong Li looked at each other, and then immediately took a step back. Mr. Zhou came out of the bathroom again and saw where Chen Lian and Gong Li were standing. His eyes swept over Chen Lian slightly, and then he couldn't help but spat, "What are you two talking about?" "Sister Gong Li, it's so late, you should go back." Mr. Zhou calmed down and began to chase people away. "Gong Li, I just called you sister. Just kick them out now, the little sister is not cute at all." After 10 minutes of dilly-dallying, Gong Li was driven away by Mr. Zhou. As soon as Gong Li left, Mr. Zhou immediately pounced on Chen Lian. "You're quite capable, aren't you? Do you like your sister that much?" Mr. Zhou grabbed Chen Lian's hand and squeezed it, and said mercilessly. "Don't slander me, or I'll get angry. Get angry if you can. Just send it." As soon as Chen Lian got angry, Mr. Zhou immediately surrendered. "It's really fun. But Chen Lian likes to bully honest people. I just like to see her stubborn little expression when she wants to resist but can't." After this small episode, Chen Lian's life returned to peace again, but it was just calm on the surface. "I go to the studio at midnight every morning and let director Cheng do the bidding, performing all kinds of weird expressions in front of the camera. In the evening, after finishing work and returning to the hotel, I ran in both directions. After dealing with Mr. Zhou, I ran to paint Gong Li. After painting, I went back to my room to sleep. But this peaceful and busy life will soon come to an end. It is now November, the weather in Suzhou has become colder, and the flowers and plants in the Pang family's mansion have become listless. Many scenes can no longer be filmed and we have to wait until next spring to continue." Chen Lian felt quite helpless. It took so long to make a movie. It was not because of poor performance by the actors, nor because of the director's technique. It was simply because of the director's brain. According to the plan, the crew will be temporarily disbanded in 2 days. They will reunite in March next year and go directly to Shanghai for filming. They will return to the Pang family mansion to continue filming in May. After filming that day, Leslie Chung took the initiative to invite Chen Lian and the others to have a drink together. Chen Lian was naturally willing to drink from Zhang Guorong. He returned to the hotel in the evening and took a shower before going to his room. Tonight seemed to be a party for the actors. Director Cheng and Duke Fan were not there, maybe they were taking photos in their own rooms. Gong Li, Mr. Zhou, and he Sci-fi have all arrived. Originally, Zhang Guorong invited several old actors from the movie to come with him, but they are old and do not want to drink red wine with young people. Zhang Guorong's room is the largest in the hotel. Producer Su Feng takes special care of Zhang Guorong and provides the best treatment possible within all conditions. Although it was not Chen Lian's first time here, he was still a little envious when he looked at the spacious and bright room. The gap between people was sometimes wider than the gap between people and dogs. The room given to him by the crew was a shared standard room. Chen Lian is still paying for a single room at his own expense. Fortunately, the salary was high enough, 15,000 yuan, otherwise he would have to pay for the movie himself. A few people sat drinking and chatting for a while, and suddenly they talked about movies. Zhang Guorong suddenly asked, "Do you think this movie can still win an award?" Everyone knew that Leslie Chung was talking about winning the award in Cannes, not other awards, but they were all a little unsure and didn't speak for a while. Director Chen was not here, so there was no need to deliberately flatter him, so I felt a little unconfident. Only Chen Lian took a sip of wine and said directly, "There is no chance of winning the prize." Everyone was a little surprised by Chen Lian's forthrightness. Only Zhang Guorong was not surprised. He looked at Chen Lian and asked, "Why do you say that? Is it because we didn't perform well?" Chen Lian shook his head and said, "It's not that the acting was bad, it's that this movie didn't meet the standards of an excellent movie from beginning to end. The script is not solid, the characters are frivolous, and the emotions are distorted. All the emotional tension is only shown through the hazy lens of the photographer. If the characters don't stand up and the story doesn't flow, what's the use of the beautiful shots? How can a movie like this win an award?" Chen Lian's sharp words silenced everyone, and they actually felt this way in their hearts. Especially Zhang Guorong and Gong Li, they had the deepest feelings. The feeling when filming Huayu was completely different from that when filming Farewell My Concubine. The quality of a movie can actually be felt during the filming process. Not only the director can feel it, but the actor can also feel it naturally. He will have a very clear feeling about whether the role he plays is good or not. Zhang Guorong feels that for the character he plays, he has tried his best to make him more real and make his emotions more rational, but in the end it will still give him a strong sense of emptiness and awkwardness. The same goes for Gong Li. She often feels like she is acting like a demented pervert rather than a feudal eldest lady awakening to women's rights. There is nothing about women's rights in the whole movie. The only thing related to women's rights is that Ling Long takes charge, seducing Zhang Kaiyu and Zhongren, and then rejecting Zhang Kaiyu and Zhongren. If this is considered women's rights, it's really ridiculous. In the final analysis, Hanazuki is just Fenjiu and has nothing to do with anything else. Despite such a strong sense of awkwardness, Gong Li and Zhang Guorong still acted according to the script and requirements of director Cheng. Because in director Cheng's words, this movie seems to be completely different from what they acted. The story told by director Cheng is very profound. Zhang Guorong and Gong Li once thought that they did not understand the director's intention and that their acting was not good enough. But now after what Chen Lian said, they all understood a little bit, and it was inevitable that they felt a little angry and disappointed. This movie is director Cheng's personal plaything. We, including the rest of the crew, are just tools for director Cheng, so don't expect any awards. Chen Lian's last words were like a thorn, piercing into the hearts of several people. The party ended in a hurry, and everyone was in a bad mood, except Chen Lian. Chen Lian had understood it a long time ago, so he had no other feelings. He only had one thought in his mind, and he would never cooperate with director Cheng again. After coming out of Zhang Guorong's room, Gong Li was walking in front and suddenly looked back at Chen Lian and said, "Go and finish the painting tonight." "No. I'm leaving tomorrow, and he wants to accompany me." Mr. Zhou immediately hugged Chen Lian's arm and said. Sci-fi, who was about to leave, looked at the three of them with complicated eyes. Their relationship was so complicated and exciting that I wanted to gossip about it. There is one more chapter, I will update it later. I just got home to have some food. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 55. Chapter 55. Don't ask for a sister, ask for a brother, please pursue reading. In the quiet corridor, the dim overhead light casts beautiful light and shadow on the face. The atmosphere between the three women and one man in the long corridor is very subtle. Sci-fi, a melon eater, wanted to leave but also wanted to read gossip, so she walked to the room very slowly, unable to walk even half a foot in one step. Seeing Sci-fi moving slowly, Gong Li didn't want to continue to entangle. She just gave Chen Lian a look and asked him to figure it out, then turned around and held Sci-fi's arm. "Sister Fei, did you twist your foot?" Gong Li asked with gentle and considerate concern. Sci-fi twitched the corner of his mouth and said with an embarrassed look, "My feet are numb after sitting for too long." "Really? Then I'll help you." The two of them walked side by side towards their room, with only one or two indistinct conversations coming from time to time. "Why don't you and the three of you feel ashamed? Sister Fei, you don't understand. You have to fight for it." Chen Lian looked at Gong Li and Sci-fi's leaving figures, then turned to look at Mr. Zhou and said, "Let's go back." "Yeah." Mr. Zhou raised his head like a general who had won a battle, extremely arrogant. After returning to his room, Chen Lian yawned, feeling the stamina of the red wine coming back. "Are you sleepy?" Mr. Zhou stood behind Chen Lian and rubbed his temples. Mr. Zhou's thin fingers were soft and comfortable. Chen Lian squinted his eyes and asked, "What time will you pick up the car tomorrow?" "I'll see you off." Mr. Zhou, who was next to Chen Lian, had a smile on his face and said in a brisk tone, "No need, you have a scene to shoot tomorrow, don't you? I'll wait for you in the capital." Chen Lian raised his hand and held Mr. Zhou's little hand and said with a smile, "I'm waiting for you. You'll have to stay home for a few days, right? Let's take 3 or 4 days. Let's go to the capital for a visit." Mr. Zhou lay on top of Chen Lian, his pointed chin resting on Chen Lian's head. Chen Lian held Mr. Zhou's hand and said, "I may be busy when I return to the capital." Oh, Mr. Zhou was a little disappointed, and then suddenly remembered something and asked, "Are you still going to school when you go back?" Chen Lian, "I don't want to go, I just want to get a diploma." "You are not allowed to seduce others in school. You know, I never take charge. You never take the initiative. I know better than to say anything. Now I can take the initiative. You asked for it yourself. I'm really a man who doesn't take the initiative. Stop talking nonsense. Do you want a rope?" "Want?" Mr. Zhou left early the next morning, and Chen Lian was still a little unaccustomed to it. However, when he went downstairs to eat, he saw Gong Li's resentful eyes, and his unaccustomed feeling disappeared. "My good sister's painting hasn't been finished yet." Compared with the skinny Mr. Zhou, the plump Gong Li takes more time to paint. Chen Lian feels like his inspiration has been squeezed out every time he finishes painting. Chen Lian made a bowl of warm millet porridge, took a few steamed buns and found a place to sit down. The stuffing of the steamed buns was very filling, and the meat-filling juices overflowed after one bite. Chen Lian squinted his eyes in enjoyment, feeling that all the lost energy had been replenished. "Look at the dark circles under your eyes. If you continue like this, I'm afraid you'll die suddenly," Gong Li said, sitting opposite Chen Lian. Chen Lian opened his eyes and glanced at Gong Li, and said angrily, "How about you ask me to paint for you every day, is that okay?" Gong Li raised the corner of her mouth slightly, then changed the subject and asked, "What are your plans to return to the capital? No one can teach you at school with your level. If you pass the exam, you have to go. It's still necessary to show your face," Chen Lian said after taking a sip of millet porridge. Gong Li looked at the sandwich bag. She took a bite of and didn't like it, then she put it into Chen Lian's hand and said, "Well, if you don't want to tell me, I'll ask for leave for you." "I know." Chen Lian took a bite of the bun, then suddenly remembered something and looked at Gong Li and said, "Do you have time to return to the capital?" "Huh?" Gong Li looked at Chen Lian with her chin propped up, and then asked, "Do you want to date me?" Chen Lian ate the buns in 2 bites and said vaguely, "Go to the art exhibition. I have a painting in the exhibition." "What art exhibition?" Gong Li asked curiously. "For the National Art Exhibition, a friend helped me send it to the exhibition. I just found out about it 2 days ago," Chen Lian explained. Chen Lian was actually very curious about how Bo Qing sent his paintings to the exhibition. According to his understanding, it is not easy to participate in the exhibition, and it is even more difficult before the exhibition begins. But you can find out after you go back to the capital and ask. Gong Li thought of the painting Chen Lian painted for her, and asked curiously, "What did you paint? Is it the same as what you painted for me?" "Well, that's about it." Chen Lian wiped his mouth, and then saw Zhang Guorong coming over with a yawn, and waved to him. Zhang Guorong came over with a plate and sat down, peeled the eggs and asked, "Why did you call me?" "Would you like to go to the art exhibition?" Chen Lian asked, reaching out and taking another bun from Zhang Guorong's plate. Zhang Guorong rolled his eyes, and then said, "When and where can we go to see it?" "From the end of next month to January next year, we will be in the capital," Chen Lian said while biting the bun. "Do you have any paintings of yours?" Okay, then I'll go take a look." After hearing Zhang Guorong's agreement, Chen Lian immediately asked seriously, "Are we friends?" Suddenly seeing Chen Lian being so serious, Leslie Chung was a little uncomfortable, but he still said, "Yes." Chen Lian immediately hit the snake with a stick and said shamelessly, "Then I'll invite you to see the painting exhibition. Do you want to express your gratitude? I heard that there will be a rock concert in Hungham next month. Please invite me to the concert." "Get lost. I'm not going to the art exhibition." Zhang Guorong cursed angrily, stuffed the peeled eggs into his mouth and left. Chen Lian looked at Zhang Guorong's leaving back and couldn't help but muttered, "Stingy guy." Gong Li looked at Chen Lian and couldn't help laughing. She always felt that Chen Lian and Leslie Chung looked like annoying children together. "What concert are you talking about?" Gong Li twirled her hair on her fingertips, then said with a smile, "Tell my sister that she can take you there too." "No, you can't buy tickets now," Chen Lian refused directly. "Gong Li, even if my sister has money, it won't work." Chen Lian approached Zhang Guorong because the company holding the concert was Rolling Stone, and Rolling Stone was now looking for Zhang Guorong to sign a contract. Li Zhongsheng called him 2 days ago, and Chen Lian heard it. "I definitely can't miss this concert. Chen Lian likes Do Wei very much. I really want to attend this concert." Chen Lian did nothing that day and kept pestering Leslie Chung, insisting that he take him to the concert. "Chen Lian, you are so annoying." "Okay, I'll take you there." Leslie Chung was a little crazy, and then called his agent Cheng Shifen in front of Chen Lian to ask for some tickets, and asked Cheng Shifen to help Chen Lian with the pass issue. "Go away, brother, I will be your fan from now on." Chen Lian was in a great mood after achieving his goal. Gong Li curled her lips in envy from the side. She has a good sister who doesn't ask for anything but wants to ask for her brother. If her sister has money, she can't buy any tickets. On the way back to the hotel in the evening, Gong Li sat next to Chen Lian and said angrily, "Why don't you beg me? You can't buy a ticket." "Chen Lian, just wait for me." Gong Li made up her mind and called her assistant as soon as she got off the car and asked her to book a ticket for her. "I can't believe that I can't even buy a concert ticket." After arriving at the hotel, Gong Li angrily walked to the room to make a phone call. Chen Lian, who was lagging behind, narrowed his eyes and saw a familiar car. A black Toyota Camry. Another good sister who went to make money also came. "My head hurts a bit today, and the book friends in the group spread rumors that I am dead and will burn incense for me next year. They are so vicious. The gentlemen who have not joined the group have joined the group to help me scold them." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizuda Xiaomao. Chapter 56. Chapter 56. Fish short of water, please follow up. The wind in late autumn is a bit bleak, and even if the golden afterglow of the setting sun shines on you, you will still feel chilly. The black Toyota Camry reflected bright light in the afterglow. Chen Lian squinted at this familiar car and sighed helplessly. Mr. Zhou has just left and Myron Cheng has arrived. Is the triangle so stable? Zhang Quarong got off the minibus, saw Chen Lian in a daze, walked over, patted him on the shoulder and asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I wonder if I will be cut in half tonight." Chen Lian took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, threw one to Zhang Quarong, and then looked at the hotel door with resistance on his face. If he could, he wouldn't want to go back tonight. Zhang Quarong followed Chen Lian's gaze, blew out a puff of cigarette and said curiously, "Didn't Mr. Zhou go back? Gong Li will be alone tonight." Chen Lian shook his head and said with a desolate expression, "Here comes a more powerful one." "Isn't it?" Zhang Quarong looked at Chen Lian in surprise and asked with disbelief, "Are you still related to other people? You are really a scumbag." Chen Lian nodded, and then looked at Zhang Quarong for help. "Damn, don't expect me to help you. A scum like you should be cut in half." Zhang Quarong cursed and ran away in a hurry. Chen Lian, what about demeanor? What about elegance? Why are you running so fast? After watching Zhang Xianfeng disappear from sight, Chen Lian threw away the cigarette butt and walked to the hotel as if he were dead. The two of them would probably be separated in a slap, so what are you afraid of? When he went upstairs, he saw Chen Myron leaning against the wall at the end of the corridor and Gong Li opposite her. I don't know what the two people were talking about there, and Chen Lian couldn't hear clearly because they were too far away, but their expressions didn't seem very beautiful. The first thought in Chen Lian's mind was to run quickly, otherwise it would be a life and death situation again. Unfortunately, the sharp-eyed Chen Myron had already seen him, and immediately dropped Gong Li and trotted towards her. Chen Lian, who had just raised his feet, had no choice but to smile and pretend to be calm and stand there. The warm yellow light in the corridor shines on Chen Myron's body, like a hazy light. Her jumping steps and beating ponytail are like an elf walking out of a painting. "I miss you so much." Chen Myron ran up to Chen Lian and jumped on him, like a child grabbing candy. Chen Lian stretched out his hand to support Chen Myron. The messy thoughts in his heart disappeared instantly. He couldn't help but nuzzle Chen Myron's smiling face and said, "I miss you too." Gong Li at the other end of the corridor looked at Chen Lian and Chen Myron with a cold face. At this moment, she had the thought of giving up. He was just a little brother, so boring. But this thought disappeared after Chen Myron turned back and smiled provocatively at her. "How dare you provoke?" Gong Li suddenly felt an evil fire in her heart. After so many years of debut, she has snatched up several actresses, but no one dared to provoke her like this. Gong Li raised her steps and walked towards Chen Lian and Chen Myron, her momentum getting stronger and stronger. Chen Lian noticed the sudden aura on Gong Li's body and couldn't help but feel nervous. He subconsciously let go of the hand holding Chen Myron. But Chen Myron clung to Chen Lian like a sloth, looking at Gong Li without any sign of weakness. The light bulbs in the corridor suddenly flashed, as if affected by an invisible aura collision. Chen Lian looked at the light bulb, and a thought flashed in his mind, "Where am I? What should I do now?" Looking at the door that was so close, Chen Lian immediately opened the door with Chen Myron in his arms and went in. Before leaving, he said something silently to Gong Li. Gong Li looked at Chen Lian and Chen Myron who disappeared in the corridor, and heard someone coming upstairs and laughed coldly, and then also returned to the room. I don't know how long it took before Chen Lian opened the door and went out. Chen Miran arrived after a long journey and had already rested. Arriving at Gong Li's door, Chen Lian looked at the door with a crack left, gently pushed it open and walked in. Gong Li was sitting on the small sofa in the room, squinting her eyes and dozing off. When she heard the footsteps, she opened her eyes and saw Chen Lian. She sneered and said, "Isn't this Lu Buletin? Come to me if you have time." "Sister, what are you talking about? I'm in the Mid-Autumn Festival." Chen Lian blinked shamelessly at Gong Li. Gong Li stood up and walked to Chen Lian, looked into his eyes, sniffed and frowned. "My Mid-Autumn Festival will not do this to my sister." Chen Lian drooped his eyebrows and said calmly, "Sister, you. If you say that, then I will leave." Gong Li rolled her eyes, raised her hand and hit Chen Lian and said, "Go and take a shower and talk to me again." "Sister, I'm here to draw pictures for you, why are you taking a bath?" "I smell so bad." Gong Li grabbed Chen Lian's hand and asked, "Will you wash it?" "Wash? It's really difficult to paint these days. When you came to paint for Gong Li, you had to take a bath." When Chen Lian came out of the shower 10 minutes later, he saw that Gong Li was already waiting, with a white wool blanket covering his body. Like the saint taking a nap in the book. Chen Lian squinted at this scene, and every time he couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of this scene. Chen Lian sat in front of the easel. After adjusting the colors, he picked up the brush and painted lightly on the canvas. Gong Li was lying on the bed with her chin supported by one hand, looking at Chen Lian who was concentrating on painting, and asked softly, "What's going on between you and Myron Cheng?" "Good friend." Chen Lian held the brush with his slender fingers and gently touched the canvas. "Then who am I?" "You are a sister." Chen Lian raised his head and looked at Gong Li with a pure smile and said, "You are a good sister of the Mid-Autumn Festival." "But Linglong doesn't love Zongkaiu." Gong Li's black eyes flashed with light, and then she said softly, "If Linglong is willing to be with Zongkaiu, will Zongkaiu be willing?" Chen Lian paused the brush in his hand and said with a chuckle, "What I love in the Mid-Autumn Festival is my good sister Linglong, the Linglong who doesn't love herself, the Linglong who pursues herself, not the Linglong who has lost her soul." In the dimly lit room, Gong Li's eyes dimmed a little. Thinking of the final ending of the movie, Linglong, who was poisoned into a cripple, was no longer worthy of another look at Mid-Autumn Festival. Actually, Zongkaiu doesn't want much. He just wants to be with his sister, just like he is now, without being bound by relationships or names. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 57. Chapter 57. The Problem of the Century, Seeking for Further Reading. At 3 o'clock in the morning, a thin mist rises in the ancient town, like a mysterious town in a fairy tale book. Chen Lian stood at the end of the hotel corridor and looked at the rising fog outside the window. He always felt uneasy, as if something bad would happen tomorrow morning. "We are going back to the capital tomorrow, so there shouldn't be any problems." Chen Lian thought about it and suddenly froze. Chen Myron specially drove back to the capital to pick her up, otherwise she wouldn't have gone all the way from Shanghai to the capital and then drove there by herself. Gong Li also said before that she would return to the capital with her. It seems that the problem of the century is before Chen Lian. Who should he go with? On one side are the four beauties, on the other side is Linglong. How about taking a green car back by yourself? A hard sleeper is fine, and the unpleasant foot odor in the carriage can be tolerated. Looking at the night outside, Chen Lian's thoughts were as moist as the thick rising autumn mist. If he squeezed his brain, he should be able to squeeze out a lot of water. It was really too dissolute to end up like this by accident. However, Chen Lian has never been a person who regrets. The waves are gone, so why worry about it? The boat will naturally straighten out when it reaches the bridge. Now go back to sleep. Chen Myron was still asleep when Chen Lian returned to the room. She was already very tired after driving for such a long time. After Chen Lian tiptoed onto the bed, As soon as he lay down, Chen Myron's hand stretched out, put it on his neck, and mumbled in a daze, "I'm back, go to sleep quickly." Chen Myron gently patted Chen Lian's face twice with her soft palms, as if coaxing a child. In the dark room, Chen Lian turned sideways and looked at Chen Myron sleeping in a daze, then he hugged her waist and slowly closed his eyes. The night outside the window gradually faded, and the slowly rising sun shed large rays of golden color on the thick fog, seeming to dispel the hazy sleepiness of this ancient town. Many people had already gotten up in the hotel at this time, and the sounds of packing things and various shouts mixed together to form a busy scene. Everyone can go home today. They are very excited and can't wait to fly back to their families. Chen Lian frowned slightly in his sleep, and his beautiful profile looked particularly delicate in the sunlight. Chen Myron lay on the bed, looking at Chen Lian quietly with her round eyes open, as if admiring a beautiful piece of art. At this moment, Chen Mei understood why everyone liked handsome guys. She had missed so many beautiful scenery in the past because of her fame, but luckily it was not too late. She met such a beautiful face when she was still young. Thinking of her past experiences, Chen Myron began to feel sore in her heart. She didn't get much, but she gave a lot. It was really difficult for a woman to get ahead in the entertainment industry. After being sad for a while, Myron Chen dispelled these stale memories. Although she didn't know what would happen in the future, at least she was following her own heart now. Seeing Chen Lian's eyelashes shining faintly in the sun, casting Han Kan's shadow on his cheeks, Chen Myron playfully wrapped a strand of hair around her fingers and gently played with Chen Lian's eyelashes. When the hair brushed across his eyelashes, Chen Lian frowned and opened his eyes suddenly. As soon as Chen Lian woke up and opened his eyes, he saw Chen Myron looking at him with a smile. The two shallow dimples on her face were playful and cute. The irritability that had just surged in Chen Lian's heart was instantly soothed by these two dimples. He couldn't help but smile, pinched Myron Chen's nose and said, "When did you wake up? What time is it now?" Chen Myron lay on the bed with her hands on her face, looked at Chen Lian, shook her head and said, "I'm just looking at you, not looking at the time." Chen Lian listened carefully to the noisy noise outside, sat up, stretched and said, "It's getting late, get up." Looking at Chen Lian's sexy back muscle lines, Chen Myron sat up and hugged him from behind and said, "I don't want to think about it, I just want to hold you." "Why are you so clingy all of a sudden?" Chen Lian turned his head and looked at Chen Myron and asked. Chen Myron rested her chin on Chen Lian's broad shoulders, tilted her head and looked at him and said, "I'm afraid you'll go find Ling Long." Chen Lian. More than 10 minutes later, Chen Lian dragged Chen Myron out of bed and brushed her teeth and washed her face like a child. Chen Myron kept squinting her eyes and enjoying Chen Lian's service with a bright smile. Chen Lian has a very gentle attitude towards good friends. As long as he is not greedy, Chen Lian will not be stingy with his tenderness and romance. It's just that after Chen Myron enjoyed Chen Lian's tenderness, she raised a question that embarrassed Chen Lian. "Let's set off after dinner. We should be able to reach Li in the afternoon, and we can rest there then." Chen Lian packed up his things silently, turned around and looked at Chen Myron and hesitated for a moment before saying, "I made an appointment with Gong Li to go back together." Chen Myron immediately jumped up from the bed, threw herself on Chen Lian, bit him bitterly and said, "You want me to drive back by myself?" The slight pain on his shoulder made Chen Lian frown slightly, and then he held up Mei Cheng to prevent her from falling off him. "No, I mean, I have to explain it to Gong Li." Hearing what Chen Lian said, Chen Myron's expression became better. Then she pursed her lips and blew lightly on Chen Lian's shoulder and said, "If you have a conscience, go ahead. I'll wait for you downstairs." When Chen Lian came to Gong Li's room, there was no one inside. Chen Lian breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that his good sister left first. She was such a gentle and considerate good sister, and she didn't embarrass herself. When Chen Lian felt relaxed, he went to say hello to John Quarong and then went downstairs briskly. But when he came downstairs, Chen Lian's steps were as brisk as lead. At the door of the hotel, Gong Li was wearing sunglasses and a black suitcase beside her, looking down at Chen Myren. Gong Li was almost furious. After playing charades with Chen Lian last night, she decided to just have fun and renew her relationship with Chen Lian when she had the chance. However, she didn't expect that she would meet Chen Myren as soon as she went downstairs. Gong Li, who originally had no intention of talking to Chen Myren, was about to take the cruise car to Suzhou Airport instead of Chen Myren, but was stopped by Chen Myren's words. "Sister Gong Li, you are going back alone. Is there no one to pick you up?" Chen Myren asked deliberately, and then looked at Gong Li pretending to be embarrassed and said, "I forgot, you are single, I am so embarrassed." Gong Li immediately stopped and looked back at Chen Myren, her eyes looking particularly cold under her sunglasses. Chen Myren raised her eyebrows and was not afraid at all. She walked up to Gong Li and said, "I heard that you were very close to Chen Lian on the set." Gong Li, who was about to get angry, was stunned for a moment. Where to start? What do she and Zhang Yumo care about Chen Lian? Who are you listening to? Gong Li frowned and looked at Chen Myren. Chen Myren smiled and looked into Gong Li's eyes under her sunglasses and said calmly, "It has been spread all over the world. You don't think that no one knows, but I advise you not to waste your energy." The crew who were packing things downstairs in the hotel were all surprised when they saw this scene. How could the most beautiful woman in mainland China and the most popular actress in mainland China get into a fight? However, when they heard the name Chen Lian, they seemed to understand something vaguely in their hearts. There had been rumors on the set that Gong Li and Chen Lian fell in love because of the drama, which made them gossip for a long time. "I just didn't expect that Chen Lian would hook up with Chen Myren. Our second male lead is pretty good. Are Chen Mei and Gong Li going to have a man-stealing drama? Is it so exciting?" The melon-eating people around me were immediately excited. This would make headlines. I was so lucky to be able to see it with my own eyes. As the center of public opinion, Chen Lian stood in front of the hotel and felt that life was gloomy. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 58. Chapter 58. To die alone is the goal of life, please read. Things are unpredictable, and life will always give you a slap in the face when you are satisfied and tell you what reality is. Listening to the whispers around him, Chen Lian felt that he might become the biggest gossip in the mainland entertainment industry in the next 2 months. Being someone else's talking point is not a happy thing, because those words always contain all kinds of malice. Chen Lian looked up at the bright sun hanging high in the sky. There was only one thought in his mind: why didn't it rain or thunder? Chen Mei and Gong Li, who were in the center of everyone's attention, naturally noticed the discussions around them. The two women were alert at the same time. If they continued like this, they would really become a joke in the circle. Chen Lian stood at the door and took out a cigarette and lit it slowly. He had thought of many ways to become famous, but he never thought it would be this way. John Quarong came over from behind and patted Chen Lian on the shoulder, the gloating on his face not concealed at all. Chen Lian glanced at John Quarong and asked, "Are you going to Shanghai to take a flight?" "Shanghai," John Quarong said with a smile. Chen Lian blew out a puff of smoke and asked, "Are you leaving now?" "I'll be with you." "You don't care?" John Quarong pointed at Gong Li and Chen Myren and asked with some surprise. Chen Lian shook his head, stretched and said, "Women are the most troublesome. I don't want to get involved in this boring game. I can do whatever I like." "And aren't they already fine?" Chen Lian pointed at Gong Li and Chen Myren with his fingers holding the white pole. John Quarong looked in the direction pointed by Chen Lian, and sure enough he saw Gong Li and Chen Myren changing their expressions and talking about something with smiles on their faces. They are all well-known actresses. Who doesn't care about their own image? Besides, quarreling over a man is no different from a shrew. The most important thing is that neither of them has a formal relationship with Chen Lian. Today's episode is like a ridiculous joke. Gong Li smiled and looked at Chen Miren with a kind expression, but her words were sharp. Sister, who do you think you are to say this to me? The raised corners of Chen Miren's mouth and the dimples on her face were as sweet as mellow wine, but there was a hint of coldness in her round eyes. She looked at Gong Li and said, "You don't have to worry about it. My sister is a few years younger than me. I'm still old, and there will be plenty of time in the future." The two men's quiet conversation was not heard by others, but the smiles and intimate movements on their faces made the onlookers around them a little disappointed. "Why is it different from what I thought? Shouldn't we start a fight? How come they look like good sisters? This is all possible. Chen Lian is a good at eating soft food, he has tricks." Everyone around looked at Chen Lian with a hint of contempt and envy. Chen Lian threw away the cigarette butt in his hand and felt that what Chen Mei and Gong Li cared about was not him at all, but just a woman's nature. These two women treat themselves as toys. If I like them, you are not allowed to touch them. Don't even ask if the toy is willing. Chen Lian himself also took the blame for being a master of the job from a junior high school junior to a master of two women. Objectifying men. Sexism. When will a man stand up? Give me a ride later. I'll take your car and drive away. Chen Lian's voice was a little cold. Zhang Guorong hummed, but also saw something else, and said sympathetically, "I'll leave right away. Have you packed your things?" "Yeah." Chen Lian hummed, and then walked towards Gong Li and Chen Miren. When the two women noticed Chen Lian coming over, their expressions changed. Chen Miren felt a little regretful that she had been too impulsive just now, and she smiled and wanted to hug Chen Lian's arm. Chen Lian paused to avoid Chen Mei, then looked at her and Gong Li and said, "The two sisters are really good at it." After saying that, Chen Lian left directly, ignoring Gong Li and Chen Miren's surprise. Zhang Guorong stood behind and watched Chen Lian walking over. He couldn't help but put his arms around his shoulders and said, "If you just choose one, it will be fine." Chen Lian rolled his eyes. His life was not a multiple choice question. It's a fill-in-the-blank question. "Stop talking nonsense, let's go and drop me off at Suzhou Station." "No problem." As Chen Lian and Zhang Guorong left, Gong Li and Chen Miren looked at each other and snorted at the same time, ending this absurd farce. Chen Miren immediately ran back to her car, started the car and chased after her. Gong Li looked at Chen Miren's leaving figure and found it a little funny and absurd. After glancing at the crowd watching the excitement, she calmly carried her suitcase. Got in the cruise car. In Zhang Guorong's car, Chen Lian glanced at the pursuing Toyota Camry through the rearview mirror, and then said to the driver, "Please drive faster." Zhang Guorong looked back, then said with a smile, "Are you so cruel?" Chen Lian shook his head and did not explain. Instead, he reminded, "Remember my contact information. See you in Xiangjiang next month." "I know. I will inform you after the tickets and passes are ready." Zhang Guorong patted Chen Lian impatiently, signaling him to shut up quickly. Chen Lian leaned on the back seat and glanced at the accelerating Toyota Camry again. He thought for a moment and looked at Zhang Guorong and said, "Lend me your phone." Zhang Guorong glanced at Chen Lian and handed over his phone. Chen Lian took the phone, looked at this old antique, and sighed inwardly. The phones these days don't even have snakes, they still have green screens. After recalling Chen Miren's phone number, Chen Lian dialed it. Chen Miren, who was chasing behind, looked at the car in front of her that was getting faster and faster. She was about to speed up when she heard the phone ring. She picked it up, looked at it and directly connected it and asked, "Who? Tell me if you have anything." "It's me, stop chasing her and drive properly." After Chen Lian finished speaking, he hung up the phone and returned the phone to Zhang Guorong. Zhang Guorong opened his mouth, wanting to persuade him a few words, but he still shut up when he saw Chen Lian closing his eyes and pretending to sleep. Chen Myron on the other side listened to the beep in her hand, her eyes dimmed for a moment, and then she slowly reduced the speed of the car. Chen Myron threw the phone on the passenger seat, a little annoyed that she was too anxious and should have taken her time. In the early morning of the next day, Chen Lian came out of the train station in Beijing with a yawn. He was suddenly grabbed by his arm before he could take 2 steps. Chen Lian turned around and looked over and found that the person dragging him was Chen Myron. Her eyes were red and her energy was relatively weak. Could it be that he drove here for more than 10 hours without taking a break? Chen Lian sighed and looked at Chen Myron and said, "Let's go have breakfast first and have a good rest. We'll talk about other things later." Chen Myron looked into Chen Lian's eyes and hummed. She couldn't explain how she felt. It was just that when she was in Suzhou, Chen Lian turned around without any delay, which made her a little sad. The breakfast next to the train station didn't taste very good. Chen Lian lost interest after eating 2 burnt rings, and Chen Myron only took 2 bites before giving up. It was very cold in the capital in November, and it would snow in a few days. Chen Lian looked at the groggy sky and suddenly felt that time passed quite quickly. Chen Myron recalled Chen Lian's previous indifference and felt a little sad, but she also knew that she was the one who took the initiative and declared her sovereignty before the relationship was confirmed. Chen Lian wiped his hands, looked at Chen Myron and said, "Go home and rest first, and have a good sleep. It's enough to have a romantic relationship and be happy with each other. Why should it become a long-term bond? Chen Lian doesn't intend to choose a woman and then go to the grave together. It's fine to be alone until old age." Looking at Chen Lian with an indifferent expression, Chen Myron suddenly realized that she had never seemed to have entered this man's heart. It was his tenderness that gave her the illusion. The smoke and noise of the breakfast stall were in sharp contrast to the sadness in Chen Myron's heart. She looked at Chen Lian's beautiful but not affectionate eyes, squeezed out a guilty smile and said, "I didn't mean that. It's not that easy to catch such a person." Chen Myron looked at Chen Lian's leaving figure and reflected on her heart. Maybe it would be better to get along without purpose. Chen Lian will not be stingy with his tenderness and romance, but once that line is touched, it will be as cold and hard as the ice in deep winter. If you want to capture a man's heart, you shouldn't be in a hurry, but if you drive back to him continuously, you should be able to regain a lot of goodwill. Chen Myron held her chin up and watched Chen Lian disappear into the crowd. There was no trace of guilt on her beautiful face, just like a fox trying to steal a chicken. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 59. Chapter 59. The starting point of the artist's journey, seeking further reading. The environment in Zushikao is still so dilapidated, and there seems to be no change at all after a few months. Chen Lian carried his bag back to the courtyard. He walked around the courtyard without seeing anyone, and felt a little strange. It's really strange that none of the retired uncles are here today. Chen Lian didn't care so much. After cleaning his house, he looked at the calendar that hadn't changed pages for a long time and Mr. Zhou's little face. He suddenly remembered a photo he took of Mr. Zhou in the ancient town. That beautiful scene under the sunset is much prettier than the photo on the wall calendar. Let's develop that one later and make it into a wall calendar. As for the other photos, we can't develop them. Just put away the film yourself. Chen Lian found the films he took in Tongli Watertown, sorted them out, and put away the films of Mr. Zhou and Gong Li separately, and prepared the other landscape photos for development. I don't know if Ma Xiaoqing is at home during this time, so it would be inconvenient to borrow a darkroom. After packing all his things, Chen Lian lay on the bed and started to daze. He had to go to Nortel to report tomorrow, and even if he had an official name, he had to meet with the teacher. How about tomorrow? Forget it, let's do it the day after tomorrow. School is the most annoying thing. Chen Lian pretended not to see that the day after tomorrow is Saturday on the wall calendar, so that he can make excuses not to go the day after tomorrow. In the evening, Chen Lian fell asleep in a daze and heard the adults and ants chatting in the yard. Their voices were so loud that they seemed to be grabbing eggs. Chen Lian yawned and pushed the door open. He saw several elderly and aunties worriedly saying that they were sick and wanted to buy healthcare products. The doctor said, "I have low blood sugar." "What is that blood sugar? Is it serious?" The doctor said, "My liver is not good and my body is full of toxins." "Why am I poisoned?" "Eat leftovers." The doctor said, "You will be poisoned if you eat leftovers." "Is that Sanjin oral liquid good?" "It's a bit expensive." "I think it's okay." "Doesn't the advertisement say that it can be used to treat illnesses or not to be healthy?" After listening for a while, Chen Lian knew what was going on. The healthcare products industry seemed to be making great efforts. Sales of Sanzu seemed to have exceeded 1 billion this year. The routine of pretending to be a doctor to treat the elderly and then taking the opportunity to sell healthcare products may seem retarded in later generations, but it is really popular now. That slogan is pretty good, except that it can cure all diseases. Well, it seems to be true. However, Chen Lian knew that these 2 years were the last glory days of the healthcare product industry. Advertising laws were about to be introduced, and these fake healthcare products were going to be cracked down. Chen Lian looked at the worried uncle and aunt who were ready to act, and walked over to remind him, "That doctor is fake, just to trick you into buying healthcare products. Don't be fooled." "Xiaochunzi, is it true? Is the doctor a liar?" Uncle Li was stunned for a moment and took Chen Lian's arm and asked. Chen Lian nodded and said, "Really, if you really suspect that you are not in good health, wouldn't it be better to go to the hospital for a checkup? Wouldn't it be cheaper than buying healthcare products?" Uncle Li was startled for a moment, and felt that what he said made sense. It didn't cost much to register an account. Chen Lian looked at the uncles and aunts who were thinking, and felt some indescribable feelings in his heart. He wanted to have a good body at such an old age, but his thinking was backward and easily deceived. Healthcare products created an industry legend in the 1990s and created super high sales, but this was all based on the pension money of these elderly people. It was truly a sad time. Chen Lian looked at the wrinkled faces in front of him that were full of worry and confusion. He turned back to the room and took out his camera to take a photo. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, the old people who have reached the second half of their lives reveal their fear of death and their desire for health in their cloudy eyes. The progress of the times has abandoned these old people who were once in the sunset, but the black-hearted businessmen still want to squeeze out the last penny from their pockets. Such a scene brought a strong impact to Chen Lian. It seemed that no one cared about these people who were heading towards the afterglow of life. Even when the healthcare product industry collapsed later, everyone just clapped their hands and celebrated, but forgot about these old people who had been hurt and deceived. "Uncle Li, where is the doctor?" Chen Lian couldn't help but ask, holding the camera. Uncle Li came back to his senses, looked at Chen Lian and said, "Take 2 left turns at the entrance of the alley." "Aren't you going to fight?" Uncle Li recalled Chen Lian's past experiences and suspected that Chen Lian wanted to go over and expose the liar. "No, don't worry," Chen Lian said and went out with the camera in his arms. What's the use of exposing a liar? There are so many fake doctors all over the country. What can Chen Lian do? He can only record it all with his own camera, hoping that it can be exhibited and alert more people. Old people have old ideas, but young people should be more sensible. In the next few days, Chen Lian went out with his camera every day and took a large number of photos in the streets and alleys of the capital, in the villages around the city, and at various health product sales points. At the beginning, Chen Lian was quite excited and felt that he was doing the right thing, but by the end of the shooting, he was speechless and just silently held up the camera to record it all. The gloomy sky seemed to be brewing a blizzard, and the cold wind blew on Chen Lian's face, as if blocking him from moving forward. Dragging his tired body, Chen Lian came to the downstairs of Ma Xiaoqing's house holding a large piece of photo paper. Looking up at the unlit windows, Chen Lian paused for a moment before walking into the dim corridor of the unit. Chen Lian stood at the door of Ma Xiaoqing's house and knocked on the door, but received no response. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, Ma Xiaoqing's voice came from behind. "Chen Lian? Are you back?" Ma Xiaoqing looked at the rather decadent Chen Lian with some surprise. Seeing that pretty face become so depressed, Ma Xiaoqing couldn't help but hold Chen Lian's hand and asked, "What's wrong with you? Did something happen?" Chen Lian forced a smile, shook his head and said, "It's okay, I want to borrow your darkroom." "Okay, but what's wrong with you?" Ma Xiaoqing looked at Chen Lian with some distress. "It's really okay. Just lend me the darkroom." Chen Lian's tone was urgent, and Ma Xiaoqing didn't waste any time. She opened the door and pulled Chen Lian in. After entering, Chen Lian went into the darkroom. Ma Xiaoqing was about to follow, but was locked out. Looking at the closed door, Ma Xiaoqing opened her mouth, but still did not open the door and went in. She just sat in the living room waiting for Chen Lian with some worry. The clock in the living room was ticking. Ma Xiaoqing had been sitting on the sofa looking at the darkroom door, waiting for Chen Lian to come out. I don't know how much time passed, but Ma Xiaoqing fell asleep on the sofa. When she woke up again, it was already completely white, and the sun shined particularly brightly on the snow. Looking at the extra blanket on her body, Ma Xiaoqing got up and went to the darkroom, which was already empty. Ma Xiaoqing felt empty and worried about Chen Lian's condition, but she didn't know how to contact Chen Lian. When she saw the news about Chen Lian again, it was in the newspaper 2 days later. Emerging photographer Chen Lian's personal photography exhibition Sunset, Forgotten and Deceived People will be held at the National Art Museum of China. Chen Lian looked at the prepared exhibition in front of him, and his hesitation reached its peak. He was worried that his work would not have any effect. But I was still very grateful. I turned around and looked at Gong Li and said, "Sister, thank you for helping me." Gong Li looked at the huge photos in the exhibition hall. The shocking scenes and the various expressions on the old faces made her scalp numb. "Lian, you don't need to thank me. I'm just asking someone to do something. If your work wasn't good, they wouldn't agree to it." Gong Li didn't know what to say. When she was on the set of Huayu, she always regarded Chen Lian as a very charming man, with some talent and some lust. But this time she was surprised by the power conveyed in Chen Lian's photos. Arrive. It seems that Chen Lian is a born artist. All the romance and cynicism in him seemed to be ignored by Gong Li at this moment. Yang Lizhu, the curator of the art museum, paused for a long time in front of each of Chen Lian's photos. After reading all the works, he came to Chen Lian and couldn't help but sigh, "Your works will leave a mark in the history of Chinese photography. It's really hard to imagine that you are new to photography." Gong Li looked at Chen Lian, who was silent, and felt that this would be the starting point of Chen Lian's career as an artist, a starting point that would be unstoppable and brilliant. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 60. Chapter 60. The Illusory World, Seeking for Further Reading. After the first snowfall, the air in the capital was as cold as if the cold air from the Siberian plain had invaded. Chen Lian walked out of the alley wrapped in a thick coat, stepping on the snow with 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow, still holding his bank book in his arms. Chen Lian did not expect that it would cost so much money to hold a solo exhibition. Art is really not something that poor people can play with. Art is very interesting. Most of the works of art were created by artists when they were poor, but if you want these works to become art and get recognition, you need to spend money. But how many artists are rich? Chen Lian is considered a small fortune among artists. After all, he only has a household worth 50,000 yuan, but he almost went bankrupt because of this exhibition. It cost tens of thousands of yuan to rent the exhibition hall for a week, plus the cost of publicity in newspapers and other miscellaneous money. In an instant, Chen Lian went from a household worth 50,000 yuan to a household worth 5,000 yuan. Today, Chen Lian wanted to take money to buy film. When he opened his wallet, he found that there was less than 10 yuan in it. He had no choice but to withdraw the money first. After Chen Lian ran to the bank to withdraw money, he reached out and stopped a taxi. Opening the door of the yellow bread car, a burst of heat hit his face instantly. Chen Lian quickly sat in, rubbed his hands and said, "Master, Xinjia Yikao North Street." The speed of the van was not very fast, but the warm environment inside the van still made Chen Lian feel very comfortable. This kind of shabby car can be suffocating in the summer, but it is extremely comfortable in the winter. It is still good to ride in a van in the winter, but in the summer it is better not to ride in it. The driver glanced through the rear-view mirror, and then asked in a familiar manner, "Shall we go to the newly opened JJ Disco? I've driven several of them there today." Chen Lian squinted his eyes and hummed. He was not very interested in talking. He was thinking about his own photography exhibition the day after tomorrow. The driver was talking happily, and he chuckled and said, "I just took a few girls over. It's so cold and my thighs are still bare, so I'm not afraid of freezing." Chen Lian opened his eyes and looked sideways at the driver to shut him up, but seeing the excitement on the driver's face, he didn't bother to say anything. Everyone is busy focusing on themselves these days, who cares about others? Times are developing rapidly. There were no discotheques in the past, but several have opened this year. It adds another fire to the already impetuous capital, thus neglecting those who wander on the fringes of society and those old people who are about to be eliminated by the times. The photography exhibition will be shown the day after tomorrow. Chen Lian is actually a little nervous, not sure whether his work will attract everyone's thoughts and warnings. Chen Lian did not intend to make a profit in this photography exhibition. He just hoped that the elderly people who had been deceived and had their wallets emptied could gain the attention of society. It can be regarded as one of the few business things that I can do when I return to this era. The car soon arrived at Xinjia Yikao and stopped under the huge neon sign of the disco. Chen Lian glanced at the winning number on the meter, took out 14 yuan and handed it to the driver before getting out of the car. The driver brother turned his head and looked at Chen Lian walking towards the disco, with a smile on his lips. Enyel said to himself, "Here to sniff the honey again." The temperature in the evening was very low. Chen Lian tightened his coat and went to the entrance of JJ Disco to buy a ticket for 50. It's so damn shameful to pay only 50 for a ticket. How much is a month's salary these days? However, the environment inside was quite good after entering, barely worth the 50 yuan ticket price. However, the loud music and flashing lights made Chen Lian feel a little uncomfortable. Chen Lian glanced at it, grabbed a waiter and asked, "Where can I get to the private seats on the second floor?" The uniformed waiter obviously had good training. He politely pointed to a staircase behind him and said, "Just go up there." Chen Lian nodded and thanked him, and walked towards the second floor to the loud music. Along the way, he saw many young people in fashionable clothes shouting and twisting their bodies. There was also a bold girl who wanted to drag Chen Lian to dance with her. She was very good looking, but Chen Lian was not interested at all and only felt irritated. Stepping on the exciting beat of the music, Chen Lian came to the second floor, looked around and saw Mr. Zhou sitting in the corner. Chen Lian raised his legs and walked over. Looking at Mr. Zhou, who was shaking his head, he couldn't help but pat her on the head. Mr. Zhou groaned, and when he turned around, he found that it was Chen Lian, who stood up immediately and said happily, "You are finally here. I have been waiting for you for a long time." Well, I was delayed for a while because of something. After Chen Lian explained, he sat down opposite Mr. Zhou. Mr. Zhou looked at Chen Lian pouting and leaned towards him. He leaned against him and said unhappily, I haven't seen you for a long time, and you are still sitting so far away. Chen Lian was stunned for a moment, and also noticed that he was not in the right state these past 2 days, and seemed to be affected by the previous photo shoot. Those faces always appear in my mind, and my heart is always heavy and difficult to be happy. Mr. Zhou also seemed to notice that Chen Lian's body was lifeless and incompatible with this noisy and happy place. What have you been doing lately? Mr. Zhou looked at Chen Lian's frown and asked worriedly. The loud music and psychedelic lights made Chen Lian feel a little dazed. He looked at the lights flashing on Mr. Zhou's face and didn't know what to say. This hilarious world gave Chen Lian a strong sense of fantasy. Everyone was immersed in the world of alcohol and music, and was incompatible with the real world outside. Sensing that Chen Lian was not happy, Mr. Zhou took his hand and said, let's go down to the disco. Don't be unhappy anymore. Chen Lian looked at the increasing number of people on the lower floor and the wildly twisting bodies of those young people. He felt noisy but no joy at all. I don't want to jump. Chen Lian took Mr. Zhou's hand and said a little irritably, please go out for a walk with me, it's too noisy here. Mr. Zhou paused for a moment and saw Chen Lian's disgust with this place. He immediately stood up, took his hand and said, okay. The two of them walked arm in arm through the dynamically lit dance floor filled with youthful hormones, avoiding young people showing off their enthusiasm like two clownfish swimming backwards in a school of sardines. After leaving the disco, the cold air immediately blew on his face, and Chen Lian immediately felt like he was back to reality. Chen Lian's irritability was calmed down. He turned to look at Mr. Zhou, held her hand and asked, would you like to see what I've been doing recently? Okay, Mr. Zhou immediately raised his smile, feeling Chen Lian's warm palm and feeling a little excited in his heart. Chen Lian glanced at the direction, then pulled Mr. Zhou towards the National Art Museum of China, and bought 2 cigarettes when passing by a canteen. It's so late and the museum is closed. If you want to go in, you have to check with the security guards. Where are we going? Mr. Zhou took Chen Lian's hand and jumped in small steps. Chen Lian paused for a moment, then looked back at the red neon lights of the disco bar in the distance and said, go and see the real world. I'm a little stuck today. I checked a lot of information and it makes me heartbroken. My computer crashed in the middle of writing, so unlucky for me.